On this side.
Yeah, here we should have all the equipment you should. This needs to get back to Joe. For sure. I can get that back to Joe. Once you guys start, I don't know. Yeah, no, but I think definitely there's a good for programming this year. And I think we can definitely solve a lot of those problems. The only thing I was surprised about was the view not really hot. So we tried to run it again, but then on ops had like housing before the finish.
Oh, you're talking about the
No, not the view. The fan energy switch that was on.
I didn't get it.
Yeah, it was seafood and gravy. I didn't watch it because I had to be outside all day or the whole day time before. And right, I think everything. We got it. It was like, sure.
We got 4 minutes to go time, guys. 4 minutes? All right. I want to hear more about
Yeah,
that.
what's up?
Yeah, sure. Like slideshow? Yeah, just go to the slide. Mix it up, yeah. All right, how many mics you got? You got 3? 2 or 3? 2. All right, you have 3 on the table just in case you change your mind.
Hey there, Pat.
Mic to your right.
Test it.
Too many, man. What's your friend's name? Dan. Yeah. Pick up the mic. Right. Yeah.
Test.
Okay, right.
Can you pick up the third one? Just in case, I don't think you guys need it.
Test again.
All right, awesome. And we'll keep that on the side. We're gonna keep that video on mute so you won't get any feedback. Thank you. Something to say. Mind if I hijack your here? We catch line. You guys are A's. Yep, I think you guys are
sit next to you? Can I sit next to you?
Wait, Nate, you'll be okay?
Yeah, we're good. Thank you.
All right. I'll be back at 15.
All right. So, it's already on full screen on the other side. Well, yeah.
I'm just coming back. That's alright. I just bought it.
Rock on. You guys got this. How long are we waiting for you? Whenever you guys are ready. Ready. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Do we love Sukus? Yeah. All right. Welcome to our panel. First thing I'd like to say is that this is an interactive panel. As you can see in that corner of the table, we have a whole pile of merch to give away. And whenever we ask for audience participation, Mokotan over here will hand out a slip to you, and then at the very end, all the people who got a slip will be eligible to get one piece of merch. Actually, there's like I have a pen in my backpack if you wanted to, like the front pocket. Well, with that, let's get started. So I guess, who are we? Brief introduction from me is that my name is AM22. You might have seen me around. Why am I here? Well, obviously, I love Sukus. You can see in the picture and up here on the table, my household's very two lovely Sukus. And, but another question, why am I up here instead of with you in the audience? Well, that's because let's say that I used to teach the Pokemon course in my university, so I have more than enough experience putting a room about your size to sleep.
And I am Mokotan. Most people know me through the server. I've gone to a lot of cons in the past couple years, done some meetups and hangouts. After first TOEFest, I really got into the Sukusukus, and especially alongside AM22, and then figured it'd be really worth it to do a panel on them and just extend that love to the rest of the community.
Yeah, and in my 2 years of being good friends with Alex Mokotan, my most memorable quote from him is still, "There are more important things in life than Sukus." After this panel, we'll let you all decide if that's the case. Well, the first question to answer, right? What is a Sukusuku Hakutaku? If you've spent any time as a Toho fan, chances are you've come across these things and wondered, what the heck are they? So, let's ask our favorite source, ChatGPT. Yeah. The Sukusuku Hakutaku is a fictional creature from the game Toho Project, specifically appearing in Toho Bogetsu Show Cage and Lunatic Renegade, blah, 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 blah. Now, is there anyone in the audience that can tell me, what do you think about this statement? Yes, Moko.
Made up. The AI is hallucinating.
Yes, that's correct. It's complete bogus. Yeah, so we're nice. We're just spreading misinformation across the internet now. Yes. Well, surely, there's got to be some definitive source out there that can answer this simple question. So I did some digging, and here's a quote that I found. They are small, fuzzy, cow-like beings with little beady eyes about the size of a rugby football. Okay, cool. That sounds pretty promising. Now, where does it come from? Yeah, I think we're not going to have very much luck here. So, I'm no expert, but the following is probably what I would use to define a Sukusuku Hakutaku, which is, they are a fanon representation, not too dissimilar to Yukari,
of Kamishirasawa Keine's Hakutaku form created by UPG. But there's a lot to unpack even in this simple statement, and as you will soon see, there is much, much more to it than that. By the way, Alex, do you want to give that Moko his slip? Yeah. So, as of right now, you are all enrolled in Sukuology 101, and every course comes with a syllabus. So, in this class, we're going to go into history, biology, and merchandise. And every class, of course, also has to have textbooks. So, you can see up here, we have our 4 textbooks. You can also think of these as the Suku Bible, the Suku Quran, your holy text of choice, Suku Dao De Jing. And for the rest of this presentation, we're going to refer to them as lore books 0 through 3.1. The fantastic thing about Sukus, compared to Fumos, is that they do have their own built-in lore. Oh, and technically, I think there's also a 5th Suku lore book, Sukusuku no Omake, which basically means omake is like an extra thing that they give you. And I believe this was handed out along with Sukusuku no Nanika, lore book 0, and that just means something about Sukusukus. However, I've not been able to find any physical copies of this book, and the content is largely repeated within Lore Book 1, so we're going to disregard that book for the rest of this presentation. Now, I would like to give you a basic overview of how these books are typically structured. So, they'll usually have 2 sections. One where they just introduce all of the different Suku variations, and for each variation, they'll have kind of like an overview page of the Suku's abilities, and then followed up by a comic or comics kind of detailing their interactions within Gensokyo. And at the very end of the book, there will be a section that basically shows off their merchandise. However, another important thing to note is that these books are actually existing in universe. So basically the story of why these books got made is because various people have approached Keine thinking that the different Suku variants are the product of her and the other residents of Gensokyo. Well, you have an imagination, right? And in order to beat the allegations, she basically creates the very first Suku book and spreads it around to document how Sukus actually come to be, how the variants actually come to be. And you can actually see sprinkles of this book appearing throughout the lore books. But this does come with a bit of a problem, which is that we have somewhat of an unreliable narrator. Like, I don't know how much of you are familiar with the Pokédex lore, but it's kind of it's kind of a similar situation to that, where, Keine has her own interest in mind, and she's documenting all the Sukus, but it might not be completely accurate, and you will see some questionable things later on. But basically what this means for us is that we're going to be looking at general trends across the books throughout this presentation, rather than specific instances, because for every specific instance, there's almost bound to be a contradiction there. Anyways, let's jump right into the course with part 1, Keine's specialty, history. And to do that, we're just going to jump right into the timeline of important events that occurred within the Suku space. First up, we got the wise master, the visionary. UPG comes onto the scene with his first post on Pixiv. You can see there's his Twitter, and there is his first post, which is basically a New Year's commemoration for Final Fantasy. But what we're really interested in is on September 5th, 2008 when UPG creates the Suku. This comic instantiated the Suku in history, cementing it as a legendary creature that many will continue to tell tales about far, far into the future. And this really made the rounds on the Japanese internet, with many people seeing this and thinking, how can such a cute thing possibly exist? And one of these people was the faithful inheritor, the staunch shepherd, Nuko Depot, who founded his circle on February 27th, 2009. Now, one minor clarification I will make here is that technically the guy's name is OL and Nuko Depot is his circle name, but for the rest of this presentation, I'll be using it interchangeably. As you can see there, his very first post on some random website that I dug up was made on that date, and directly after it, he made a post about giving away his Reimu body pillows that he made. So some would say that we're off to a strong start. Absolute based Giga Chad. Next up, in late 2009, Nuko Depot starts his project. Let's make the Sukusuku Hakutaku real. And you can see a bit of his design process over here, the prototyping of the Suku plush. We'll get more into this later. But finally, in 2011, March 13th, Sukusuku no Nanika is released alongside the very first Suku plushes. You can see up there in the top left, that's the first plush that they released, and alongside it, Lore Book 0. And continuing the momentum, in May 25th of 2012, Nuko Depot released Lore Book 1, and this one is really foundational for setting the scene for different variants of Sukus. As you can see there, the plushes that got released in this one were the blue Kene and the pink Moko. So continuing forward, there are going to be variant Sukus of other Toho characters, both within the lore and the merch line. It was also foundational in introducing some of the key Suku artists that we'll see recurring throughout the different books, such as Rebecca, who drew the Reimu Suku you see there, or Hitori, who drew that comic of Kene down there. Next up, we got Lore Book 2, which is pretty much just a continuation of the first one. We got even more variants that got introduced, such as those plushies you see in the bottom right there. And I guess like what I like particularly about this one is that it kind of establishes in the lore that there's a Suku king who lives in the Suku kingdom, and Moko actually gets lost in the Suku kingdom and needs Kene to rescue her. Next up, I originally wasn't going to talk about this, but I figured, you know, it is a staple merch. It is a staple merch line now, and there is some very cute art. So why not talk about the Suku towels? These are all drawn by Terrajin, and they're basically just microfiber towels with various characters and some Sukusukus. The very first one on May 6, 2014 is this one you see here with the Ran and the Chen. And don't worry, we'll see plenty more of these in the future. However, next up, we actually have the Lore Book 3.1 release, and you'll notice that it is 3.1 and not just 3, because it's only a partial release. You can see there on the white Sukus, the rice Sukus, that there's a faint outline of the other Sukus that Nuko Depot planned to release. But for some reason or another, he wasn't able to complete the full release, so he just released this partial book with the top half. But he did promise us that within the next year he would release, the rest of the book, more lore books, more merch, pillows, games, and things like that. Though if you look at the timeline, well, you'll see that that never came to pass. And there is a big gap in the timeline here, but to be fair to Nuko Depot, a little something happened in 2020, as well as, it's not like this circle was just like sitting there spinning their wheels doing nothing. They actually released a lot of things in this time period between 2016 and 2019, such as, the Oku and Orin Sukus, as well as Futo and Yuka in 2016, Raisin and Tay in 2017, new towels throughout 2017 and 2018. However, they were pretty much just operating within an existing framework rather than coming up with anything truly revolutionary like new merch lines or new lore to expand upon. So many people have called this like the dark ages of Suku or the Suku winter, even though, stuff was obviously still going on. However, now we are seeing things start to pick up a little bit, as very recently, in October 12th, 2023, at Koromu, we saw the extinction in the wild of the giant Suku and the long, long Suku. If you don't know what those are and you're interested, stick around because we'll talk about that at the end. Yeah.
For our context, the only ones remaining live in captivity, so gonna be kind of a bit of trouble trying to find them now.
Yeah, definitely. It's very unfortunate. But the next event is actually pretty cool. On August 16th, 2024, Nuko Depot released the Sukusuku Suika game. So just like the original Suika game and the other Toho variant that preceded it, the Sukusuku Suika game has you combining Sukus of smaller sizes to create bigger Sukus. It's a very simple game, but you can actually customize your lineup. As you can see in the top left, you can choose which Suku you start with and which is like the biggest Suku. I know when this came out, I spent days and days trying to get to the biggest Suku. You too? Hell yeah, I love that game. And even just now, like 2 months prior, we have some news that Yotsu KK obtains permission from Nuko Depot himself to include Sukus in the Aki farming game. And this is basically the spiritual successor to the hit fan game Mystia's Izakaya. Yeah, some big news right here. Get excited. So, with all these new artists getting interested in Sukus, another generation coming of Suku content creators, what is there in store in the future? We don't really know. Perhaps Nuko Depot will even release something, such as the 4th Suku book. Well, yeah, clearly my artistic skills are a little lacking. But anyways, the more astute among you would notice that the timeline does continue beyond 2007. So, we are now getting into the advanced timeline. And here, we are going to talk about the different pieces that make up the Sukusuku. Well, yeah, you do see there is a bit of a gap between 2600 BC and the 90s. But to be fair, if you've ever seen anyone born in the 90s, this will not be that much of a stretch to include them on the same timeline. And yeah, speaking of that, let's get into our first piece of the puzzle. And of course, that is going to be Kane herself. So, Kane, besides having a impossibly difficult to spell name for Americans, is the Stage 3 boss of Imperishable Night. She later appears in her Hakutaku form in the extra stage, and yes, Kane is one of the few characters in Toho to have multiple forms that she switches between. The blue guy you see up there is the regular one that appears in Stage 3, and the green guy is the extra one. She serves as a school teacher at the human village and also its protector. So her abilities are eating and creating history. Eating history is basically kind of just hiding it, at least from what we've gotten in the lore so far. Like, for example, during Imperishable Night, she eats the history of the human village to protect it from the so-called heroines. And yeah. However, some of you might be wondering, what even is a Hakutaku? And that would be a fantastic question.
Whoa.
The Hakutaku basically originated as the Baizi in ancient China. And Hakutaku itself is just basically, you know, the same characters you see there, but pronounced in the Japanese way. Its appearance, what it looks like is, if you're going by the Chinese way, it looks kind of like a mix between a lion or a tiger and a dragon. And if you're going by the Japanese depiction, then it kind of looks like that image down there, where it's a cow with a shit ton of eyes and the face of an old man. One of the most famous stories of the Hakutaku is when it appeared in front of the Yellow Emperor in 2600 BC in ancient China. And it just handed him this thing called the Baizi Tu. It's basically a book of every single yokai. And because of this, the Hakutaku has long been associated with wisdom and mentorship. And of course, following this, it would be viewed as very auspicious in both China and Japan. For example, in China, people would hang up pictures of the Hakutaku or copies of the Baizi Tu in their homes to attract good luck. And in Japan, parents would tell their kids to sleep on an image of the Hakutaku in their pillow to cure diseases and, I guess, remove confusion and all that type of stuff. If that sounds a little familiar to you, like perhaps, what's up? Oh yeah.
And going back, just chime in a bit more about the history with the Hakutaku from China, originally the Baizi. The name is carried over to Japanese, meaning roughly white marsh or white swamp of sorts. And despite all that's been written on it, both in ancient times when there was, a form of yaguai, or nowadays through various, media like the Toho Project, the name is still it's very unclear where the name itself came from or why it was attributed to such a, wise, terrifying creature.
Yeah, there are some theories that are like, perhaps it's called white marsh because the body was typically depicted as white and it might have lived in marshes. But yeah, like Alex said, it's kind of unclear. Let's see. Yeah, so it is viewed as auspicious and it has some sort of like dream-like powers. And you might think this is similar to perhaps the Baku. Well, if I had more time, I would go into my conspiracy theory of how Kane and Doremi are the same person. But perhaps that is better saved for a different time. One tangent that I will go on to, though, is that many of you here in the audience are likely already familiar with the Hakutaku through another fictional character, and that is Absol from Pokemon. I think it's interesting that in Absol's flavor text, it's a wise Pokemon that can sense disasters and tries to warn the people about them before they happen. However, the people fear it as they associate its presence with the disasters, thinking that it causes them. And this is really the opposite of how the Hakutaku is perceived within history, but perhaps it is a more natural reaction to the presence of an all-knowing, wise beast. And this is indeed how Kane is often portrayed in many fan works as, as best a, begrudgingly accepted protector of the village, and at worst, a beast that has infiltrated the schoolhouse and is corrupting the children. And in the end, I think Kane is a very complex character. She's basically straddling on the border of human and monster, and it's very fitting for the complex yokai that she was based on. However, Sukus, as you will see, often flip this on its head, and instead of complexity, present as extremely simplified personalities of their base characters, and approach life with a very simple worldview. However, the wise origins of the Suku may suggest that beneath their goofy exterior, the Sukus may be more keen on their surroundings than they let on. Well, now that you understand Kane and her origins and how that contributes to the Suku, let's talk about the next piece of the puzzle. Yeah, it's Yukari's. I basically am obligated to talk about this because within the original comic that UPG made, Reimu makes a comment that asks if the Sukus are just another variant of Yukari's. So it's clear that this fed into the design. However, it's just really way too much to cover here. Like if we dived into the Yukari's, we'd be here for another an hour and a half, so let's not do that. Instead, my very quick summary is that they're basically disembodied Toho heads that have their own existing but very questionable lore. Look into it if you want. I suggest you don't. And they basically evolved from ASCII art on 2chan from somewhere between 2005 and 2007. This is what I gathered from the interviews with the person that claims to have created the Yukari's. But yeah, not too much details beyond that. All right, but sticking with 2chan, the next thing we need to talk about to understand Sukus is this ASCII art. And to introduce this topic, I'd like to do it with a game that many of you are probably familiar with. That's right, it's Cat Mario. The absurdly difficult Mario game that basically takes everything you know about Mario and flips it on its head. Now, if you look at this guy over here, you might think, that looks a little familiar, you know? His face, isn't it the same face as Suku's? Well, in fact, Cat Mario and the noble Suku share a common ancestor. Are you interested? Yeah? Let's keep going. To discuss this, we're going to have to talk about Cowmoji. No, not like Cowmoji, but Cowmoji, which are basically Japanese-originated string portrayals of facial emotions. And here are some examples. This is the very first Cowmoji that was ever created by, let me look at my notes, sorry. By Wakabayashi Yasushi in 1986. It's basically just a happy face. Here's another one, it's a sad face. There's another one, it's like an angry face. It's like, I want hugs. And my personal favorite, why? So you'll notice that these are very similar to the emojis that we use when texting, but there are some key differences from Western text speech. Most obviously is that they can be read straight on, you know, they're not sideways, you don't have to like tilt your head or whatever. But also, they emphasize the eyes over the mouth in line with Japanese aesthetic preferences. And they definitely play into kawaii culture, which if you don't know what that is, it's very real and it's very fascinating to see how kawaii culture influences the marketing of different companies as they like try to sell their product to Japan as well as the West. I mean, it's probably too much to get into here, so we'll not talk about that further. But they also influence the creation of emoji, and most importantly to us, of course, Suku's face is also Cowmoji. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking about it. So what exactly is it? Well, we're going to talk about shobon, which basically means disappointed or dejected, and this is indeed the face that appears on Suku. Here is an example, right? Here's another example. This one's just a long Suku. And here is an example sentence in which it is used. Does anyone from the audience want to translate this? Yes. I'm sorry for your loss, but you can tell her that if she's interested, she can come find me. Yeah. Anyways, there is also shakin, which is the opposite of shobon, and it basically just means like, you know, you're like really excited, and this is what it looks like. You can see it's like the same thing, but with the angry eyebrows. And shobon is in fact in contention for the most widely used emoji on the Japanese internet. Indeed, it shows up everywhere, you know? Cat Mario, as we said earlier, obviously has the face, but in Japanese, it's called shobon no action. It shows up in Japanese language learning apps. Melon Book's mascot, you know? If you need some help, yeah, there it is. But when did this term actually start getting used? Well, I did some digging across various old 2chan threads, and this is what I found. Basically, my hypothesis is that it got created sometime in early 2002 because in the post from 2001, I didn't see any uses, and this was the earliest use that I found in June of 2002, where you can see someone uses the face and also calls it shobon. Oh, and one more thing for the people that raised their hands for the translation earlier. How it's written can be either in katakana or hiragana, and the long dash may or may not be present. They all mean the same thing, but there are variants on how you can write it. Okay, so now we understand why the Suku has its majestic green coat, its moniker of Hakutaku, and its signature goofy face. However, how did it get its bodacious round body, its magnificent form? Well, to answer that, I'm going to hand it over to Alex to talk about the Sukusuku Inufuku.
Thank you, Ann. So, going up next in the timeline, there's a PlayStation 2 game you can see over there over 20 years ago in 2002 called Sukusuku Inufuku. And what it was a quiz game about raising a strange dog that you would adopt from a sort of pet shelter. And what you had in this game were these absolutely adorable, rotund little creatures. Now, in this case, they were dogs instead of cows, which is what sukus are. But in this game, it's a pet raising and management simulator. But it's not just purely the visual design of the sukus that would be pulled from this for the Sukusuku Hakutaku. What you'll see in the video as it continues on is that the sukus have an incredibly diverse range of paths they can follow as you raise them, based on how long you've been raising them and what you feed them and what they're learning. So as the video goes on, we'll show them some of the different selections, the timeline, the picking them up from the pet shop. But the most important part about this is coming up shortly, and this is again what would be pulled into the later, Suku books and Suku lore, is how many different variations can form over the months. So after only 4 months, 10 variations. After 12 months, over 90 different forms of Suku. So, right. And here's the gameplay portion where it's a quiz style game as you raise them. But this is absolutely crucial to the identity and background of the Sukusuku Hakutaku, from both their visual appearance and then much of their lore and capabilities and how they can change. And there on the left, you see a comic that pays homage to the video game itself, Sukusuku Inafuku, having a sort of crossover with the Gensokyo Sukusukus.
Yeah, I guess to add on to that, basically what happens in this comic is that in Lorebook 3.1, Kane finds the Inufuku within Gensokyo, and she scrambles to find Yukari to hurry up and yeet it back outside because, according to her, it's not its time yet. And this kind of shows like that the Inufuku still lives on within the hearts of the Japanese people as, you know, something that they value as, you know, something that shouldn't be forgotten. And indeed, the Inufuku was pretty popular during its time, having like plush lines and merch of its own. But one thing I guess you might be curious about is why it's even called Sukusuku, right? We know why the Sukusuku Hakutaku is called that. It's because of this game. Sorry, go back. Yeah, all good. But why was this thing called Sukusuku? Well, Sukusuku kind of just means like rapid within Japanese. And I think it's a popular myth within the community that it's called Sukusuku because you have to answer the questions really quickly or rapidly. But I think more specifically, Sukusuku is often used with regards to growth. So it's about like how fast you're growing your pet.
Especially in referring to like watching your children grow up. That onomatopoeia of Sukusuku, how fast they grow up.
Yeah, for sure. But while we're on the topic of names, let's go to the next slide. Let's talk about some different community names that people have for the Sukusuku. So when people talk about these things, they might actually be talking about a Suku. And many of these were actually pulled from Lore Book 1, where at the very end, there's a section that they asked people across the internet to submit Suku poems to be put at the end of the book. So many of these names come from there. First of all, we got Moldy Daifuku, you know, it's like a Japanese confectionery. I have some accompanying images. Burnt fur balls. Next. Dusted snow. A fluffy round thing that makes you want to touch it. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. My personal favorite, honeydew melon. You know, spot the difference. And this one's probably like the most important one to actually know, which is 白泽球. And this is what the Chinese community calls them. So if you go up to a Chinese fan and you say like, oh, I love Sukus, like they're not gonna know what the hell you're talking about. Because they call them something completely different. And what this basically means, it just means Hakutaku balls. So yeah, remember this, it might come in handy later. Yeah, and there's also this one. You know, mostly used within the Western fandom. Oh, actually go back. One other thing that I wanted to talk about is, you know, you see those white Sukus up there? Within the West, we kind of like to call them rice Sukus. I see I have one right there. For hopefully obvious reasons, but does anyone know what they call them in Japan? Yes, Paitha.
Isn't it Shiratama?
Yeah, they're called Shiratama, and basically what that means is just white balls. So, very basic, some good terms for you to know. All right, but now that we know the entire history of the Hakutaku and the various parts that make it up, let's talk about its biology and ecology. And we're going to start doing that by talking about its anatomy. So first, let's talk about its body. It's questionably a vertebrate. We do see them mold into various impossible seeming shapes throughout the books. However, it is based on the Hakutaku, which was based on the cow, which is a vertebrate. So I think we can assume that it is a vertebrate. And the basic Sukus, as you can see up there, their body is green with the lower half being white. Helps with camouflage and all that. The stats on there, the height is typically 10 to 20 centimeters, I think. Yeah. And the length is typically like 20 to 40 centimeters. What that means is that these bootleg Sukus I've got up here are actually like lore accurate sized. The weight is typically 5 to 10 kilograms, which is about like 11 to 22 pounds for the Americans. Assume that's most of you. However, as with all creatures, there is going to be variation in this. In the case of Sukus, there's a lot of variation. As you can see there's a colossal Suku just towering over the horizon. All right, next. Wait, go back. Maybe I'll do the clicking. Yeah. Okay. Next let's talk about its horns. So it hurts quite a bit if they sting you. And if they're stuck in the ground, then Sukusuku can become stuck there. As you can see here. I guess some other weaknesses of the Suku include when it's grabbed by the horns or when a round object is placed beneath its body. Important to keep in mind. We can also talk about its ears, which are finely tuned to pick up keywords such as food and moko. Its feet, which despite their stubbiness, they actually run at an impressive speed. They go at 8.9 kilometers per hour, which is about 5.5 miles per hour. That's like a brisk jog, which is pretty impressive. But what's truly impressive is that they fly at Mach 3.9. If you don't know how much that is approximately 4 times the speed of sound. And if you still need a reference, Garchomp is the Mach Pokemon, so it flies as fast as like 4 Garchomps. That's insane. All right, next up, maybe let's talk about its eyes, which are able to see quote-unquote black history. And what I think black history refers to here is things that people would rather keep hidden, like embarrassing secrets, awkward moments. The Suku is able to see past all your bullshit and expose all your vulnerabilities.
It's also worth noting that since both the eyes face directly forward, that the Sukusuku, despite being bovine in origin, is a predator.
Yes, 100%. We also got its ribbon, which this I found really interesting. It's actually considered part of the Suku's body. So it needs that for balance, much like a cat might need its whiskers for sensation. And I think this would also mean that on all of the other Suku variants, the various accessories such as like hats and bows and things like that, they're all necessary for it to function. And we also have the tail, which is, very wispy, very soft and fluffy, and it wags when it's happy. When it gets agitated, it stands straight up, so it's basically like a puppy. And it also always has this little swirly in it. Lastly, let's talk about the mouth. It's used for eating and occasionally emitting sounds. Now, this is a good transition to talk about a topic that I'm sure many of you have wondered about. How does a Suku sound like? Or is it just me? Am I the only one that wondered that? No? Nico?
I wanted it.
Okay, thank you, Nico. Thank you. I guess typically within the comics, they're depicted as going Kyumu, or Q. That's the last time you're getting a Suku impression from me. But there's also artists who like to draw them as saying like Sukusuku, just like their name, like a Pokemon says its name. But yeah, it's definitely up for interpretation. Also, the mouth has sharp teeth that can bite. So definitely be wary of this part. The Sukus are far from harmless creatures. As you can see, those fangs are meant for tearing off flesh. And that gives us a good transition into talking about the ecology of Sukus. So basically, for those who are unaware, ecology is just the scientific study of interactions that determine the distribution and abundance of organisms. So ecologists will study both the interaction between different organisms as well as their interactions with abiotic components of the environment. And what this basically means is that we'll look at things like habitat, diet, speciation, and social dynamics. I'll tell you right now, even though I'm not an ecologist, these first two are very easy to answer in the case of the Sukus, so we'll just go through them right now. Habitat, Sukus live all over Gensokyo. As you will soon see with the different variants, within each part of Gensokyo, there is a different variant of Suku that has taken on a niche there. Diet, Sukus will eat anything and everything. There are special Suku foods that appear within the lore book, but half the time this appears, it's just used so that the Suku eats it instead of other things. So in reality, Sukus really eat everything. Random objects, check. Human food, check. Humans or yokai, check. As you can see, the Suku is basically a ferocious apex predator in whatever environment it exists in. However, different variants will have their own preferences. And speaking of that, let's talk about the variations of Sukus. So, I think the first important thing to state is that Suku variants are actually not different species or even subspecies. And this is because they can transform into one another. So the lore books describe various possibly bogus methods in which Sukus transform into different variants. For example, the very first lore book has a comic where apparently Sukus revert to their base rice Suku form just by being washed too hard. And also, in order to turn into a Wriggle Suku, a Suku must be struck by Wriggle's signature move. In order to turn into a Yuyuko Suku, a Suku has to be mistaken for a mochi and eaten by the gluttonous fatty herself before reincarnating into a Yuyuko Suku. And finally, and perhaps most questionably, in order to turn into a Futo Suku, a Suku has to be placed on top of Futo's thighs and gently stroked. No, I will not elaborate further. And these Suku variants will basically inherit traits from the base character. Let's get more into that right now. So with regards to their abilities, Sukus will have the abilities of their base characters, but toned down a little bit or even a lot. So for example, the Koishi Suku is able to manipulate the unconscious and hide itself from view, but only to adults and only while it's eating. The Suku Sakuya is able to stop time, but instead of throwing knives, it throws toothpicks. And it's also unable to move within its own stop time. The Suku flan is able to destroy popcorn kernels and turn them into popcorn. Amazing ability. I do want to highlight in particular the Hina Suku, as its ability is to go up to people who are experiencing misfortune to gather the misfortune off of them. However, it's often hated by the residents of Gensokyo because they interpret it as causing the misfortune to them in the first place. So we've really come full circle back to, hey, anyone remember the Pokemon that, the Hakutaku? Yeah? Up front with the Neko Orc? Yes, Absol. We've really come full circle with the Hinasuku on that. So because of that, I agree with esteemed community leader Ben Fish that the Hinasuku is indeed one of the most Sukus out there. All right, now let's talk about the ways that Sukus interact with people. So, Sukus are friendly with humans. For example, they like to sit on top of people's heads. And, you know, obviously Alex has a Suku sitting on top of his head, so I'll hand it off to him to speak more on that.
So it's a recurring visual motif in Suku fanworks to have them constantly right on tops of people's heads. One, it looks really, really cute, but it's also because the Sukusuku is derived from Kane, which per being a noble guardian of the village, Sukus kind of naturally take it upon themselves to want to serve as, guardians and friends to other humans. So they like to situate themselves on top of people's heads to kind of serve as lookouts. So.
Yeah, they're on top of the watchtower, standing guard. Oh, oops. However, Sukus do not make for great pets, and they also give the residents of Gensokyo a hard time. Most of the time when they interact with the residents of Gensokyo, it'll be the surrounding characters mistaking the Suku for them. Whether that's because they thought they got replaced by the Suku or they somehow turned into the Suku. For example, down there, you can see an image of Kanako and Suwako treating the Sanai Suku to a nice warm dinner while Sanai herself stares on in shock. I guess you could say maybe the folks in Gensokyo are not so bright if they think that someone turned into Suku, but that's besides the point. Of course, there's often also times of collaboration where the Suku works together with the human, whether it's the character that they're based on or someone else to accomplish some task. And we're really lucky to have the Suku lore books with the comic section where they can elaborate upon all these different relationships, and we get to see them firsthand. But, of course, Sukus will also interact among themselves. And I would say they have similar interspecies interactions to other species. So for example, they'll have times where they play together, they'll have times where they collaborate, but also there will be times where they sabotage each other, such as here where Yuyuko Suku is cooking a nice Sho Suku stew. Yeah, rest in peace, Sho. However, there is one other big elephant in the room, which is, how do Sukus reproduce? And the short answer is, basically, we don't know, but we do have some good theories. For example, in Lorebook 3.1, Kane remarks that on the night of a full moon, there will be a bunch of the green guys that look like her that show up all of a sudden. So it's unknown if this is when they breed or give birth, or if they just materialize out of thin air on these nights. But they do indeed increase in quantity somehow. Oh yeah. Now, you might be thinking, okay, we understand a lot about the Sukus. They reproduce in massive quantities. This might be like similar to the survival traits of like rats, for example, where they're not like very strong, but they produce a lot of offspring. However, this doesn't really seem to line up since like the Sukus are thriving in every single environment that they exist in. And not only that, they're basically the apex predators. You know, they'll attack anyone without fear. So there is one question now to be asked. Are Sukus OP? Hell yeah, it's power scaling time. So, basically, if you go back, sorry. Basically, what I did for this section is I went through all of the different lore books and I counted the win-loss of every single character to the Suku. And basically, I just counted it as a win for one party if they caused significant physical harm or mental harm, you know, basically makes them unwilling to fight anymore to the other party. If you think my methods are questionable or that I got the counts wrong, well, cry about it. My methods are just as legit as those of our primary source for this section, the Versus Battles wiki. But with that being said, I would like to ask the audience, there are 4 characters that have a positive win-loss ratio against the Sukus. Does anyone want to guess what they are? If you get 3 right, you'll win a special prize. Nico.
Is it Keen, Koichi, and I don't know, Moko?
You get another guess.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. You're I don't know. Not quite there. Anyone else? The Yuka? Moko? Yeah, you got 4 guesses. Okay, interesting guesses, but not correct. The blue hair, is that Seiron?
Tenchi.
Huh?
Tenchi.
Oh, Tenchi. Okay, yeah, sorry.
What's the thought? Kane, Reimu, Oren, and Utsuho.
Kane, Reimu, Orin, and Utsuho. Not correct either. The Miko up front.
Marisa, Nitori, Suika, and Homie Lake.
Really thinking on that one. But no, that is incorrect. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, can you handle the slips? All right, we'll take one more guess. Yeah. Let's see. Yes, you waving your hand. Flandre. This guy said Flandre. No, definitely wrong. I would say, yeah, that was the last guess, but Nico was probably the closest.
What?
The answer is Miko, Tenchi, Nico, and the one in front of Ron. Yeah, and the Yuko. Yes. All right. Here are the results of my analysis, and of course, first we see Kane. That makes sense because she is basically the queen of the Sukus. Next, Sumireko. Well, you know, she's using psychic powers, so obviously that's cheating. Judge, get over here, disqualified. We also see Remilia, but she's in her mosquito form, And, I don't think anyone in this audience can beat the mosquitoes. Like, they're just way too OP, so, yeah, disqualified as well. And finally, we have Koishi. But this was Koishi against the Satori Suku. And as we all know in Toho, the younger sister always bullies the older sister. So this doesn't count, also disqualified. I'm not showing the image though, because it's kind of graphic. You can find it if you want. However, let's not dwell on these matchups. The Suku is obviously still like 10 to 1 billion in terms of wins and losses, and it's more impressive and more important to look at the matches that actually did win. So as you can see here, the Suku has wins against a whole crap ton of tier 2C characters, such as Reimu, Flounder, Yuka, and it only gets more impressive the more you look into the individual matches. For example, Flounder is one of the most destroyed characters of all of them against the Suku, As you can see there, she gets her hand brutally devoured by this angry Suku. And you might think, okay, well, obviously Flounder wasn't using her power, she wasn't trying, But you know what happens if Flounder uses her power? Anyone want to take a guess?
They die.
Yeah, Raymond. Yeah, that's right. There's one more popcorn maker in the world. And even more, just as impressive, honestly, is the match against Yuka, where you can see, she's kind of bullying this Wriggle Suku, and then Wriggle just shines a light and fucking obliterates Yuka, completely disintegrates her. There's not even a trace left. So obviously, we're dealing here with a creature that has infinite defense, can't be destroyed. It has infinite power, able to basically disintegrate powerful and old yokai such as Yuka, and even cause pain to immortals such as Aiden. But how powerful is the Suku really? Well, I guess a better question is, what exactly is this 2C thing? What does it mean? Well, according to the Versus Battle Wiki, 2C means that the Suku is a multiverse level threat. So, to answer the question, are Sukus OP? Yes, absolutely, they are OP! Alex, you have any more comments to add?
I think the graph kind of speaks for itself. At this point, it should be no surprise the Suku solos the entire DBZ cast.
Yeah. Well, with this significant tangent, we're going to continue on a tangent, and I will hand it back to Alex to talk about fan theories for Sukus.
So a lot of the fan theories with Sukus primarily because they are a fan-created type of plushie. A lot of the fan theories revolve around their interactions with the other plushies, namely the big two, the Yukuris and then the Fumos. Like I said before, the Yukuris have their own separate set of questionable lore, and the Fumos, they have plenty of fan works and fan games, but not as much established lore and biology as, say, the Sukus and Yukuris. But generally, the theory comes to that because they are these derived creations of their characters they were based off of, they share a sort of commonality in a sense of a bond of sorts. So the theory is that they form these collectives if they encounter each other and pretty much form a symbiotic type of society where the Sukus function as the beast of burden and noble village guardians. The Fumos fill in as the skilled laborers, and then the Yukuris provide guidance to the village as wise village elders.
And at this point, we'd like to open it up to the audience to see if anyone has fan theories of their own. Yeah, Nico?
My theory is that the Seki Banki Suku, the bottom one's got the Seki Suku, is the prehistoric Suku that is colorblind but only comes down to the color red. That's why the top Suku, the Seki Suku, has a cape on it because they're like a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense. Like, yeah, we're like, the Sekibanki Suku can't survive on its own. It needs like both of the halves to be there. Anyone else have one? Tenchi?
My theory is that the Suku has a hunger for pellets of uranium-235. It's not flying random uranium deposits all over the place.
That fits because Suku's. It fits since Sukus will eat anything and everything, so it's probably more accurate.
Yeah, definitely. All the way in the back.
Lunarian government drone.
I don't know. What do you think?
I'll have to think on that one.
Vans?
The Ron Suku and the Satori Suku, they're married.
Oh.
And has a lot of drug addictions that I can't get into.
No, that's true. I read that.
Yeah, 100% canon. Yes. Yeah, that's pretty much true, I think.
Does this make the Chinosuku just a big ice cube that's melting constantly?
Not necessarily, but I feel like if a Suku interacted with just a block of ice itself, it might, take on that type of quality. The Miko right there.
So I believe that although they are incredibly heavy, they're able to fly, and they also are distantly descended from whales. So I think
That's-
Suku are whales.
That's true. They are often referred to as whales, despite not being whales. Ooh, Slagwood.
The Orin Fumo carts dead souls back to hell, much like the original Orin, which is why I keep one in my car.
Very wise. Nico again.
The Patobi Suku can understand English, but it's too lazy to like speak English.
You right behind Nico. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Can you speak up a bit?
The Suku's are gonna replace all of us.
Oh, yeah, probably. You in the back there, please.
The existence of sukus in Yukuris implies that there's some sort of evolutionary advantage, I hate to say convergent evolution, to having a very round body in Gensokyo. What that force is, I'm not
Yes.
entirely sure.
I definitely think there's merit to that. Same thing with their color design. The white underbelly makes it where if you're looking at them from a depressed position, it'll blend in with the blinding sun. But if you're trying to look at them from above, the greenness will help them blend with foliage. There's a lot of evolutionary advantages to Sukus.
I think we'll take one more.
One more. All right. You right there.
Add on to that, the Yukuris are evolved to be round heads to high center aggressive Sukus. It's a defense mechanism.
The roundheads is for what? Again, speak up, please.
It's a defense mechanism against Sukus. They'll high center them.
Right, yes. They'll just keep bouncing off each other. Yes.
All right, thank you everyone for your fan theories. Yeah, I think we're going to hand out the slips shortly. If you participated but didn't get one, just let us know before we give away the merch.
If you did participate theories, but you already got one, we're trying to keep it to one per person.
Oh yeah. Also, by the way, I'm sorry. My printer ran out of ink as I was printing these slips. So some of you get Rice Sukus, some of you get Super Saiyan Sukus. It's all a variant. Well, after that extremely long tangent, we're going to talk about the merchandise for Sukus. So, up on this slide, I've put pretty much all of the official merchandise that you can expect to get nowadays. You have the 4 Suku lore books, you have those metal keychain things with like the pixel art Suku on there, you have Suku t-shirts, Suku tote bags, as I mentioned before, the Suku towels, fans, and handkerchiefs as well. So actually, like, in my pocket is one of them right there. And most of these things you can find on Akiba Hobby when they're in stock, or on secondhand websites, and I'll talk a little more about that in just a second. Going into the official plushes, you can see this is the entire page from Lorebook 0 where Nukodepo goes into depth about how he created the Suku. You know, he starts with the reference art, right? And then tries to make a 3D model of it, make some plush prototypes, like where the eyes are just glued on, has a bunch of bows there, right? Like tries to glue on the bows, ends up with a complete prototype, and then starts like manufacturing them all the way up until the completed product that we know and love. And at least for me personally, I really like the bootleg Sukus, just because they're like nice and large and like very huggable, right? However, after reading like this section, I feel like I definitely appreciate the official Sukus a lot more, just like seeing all the effort that was put into it. But you know, beyond the regular green Sukus, there's still a whole ton of different official Sukus. So as you can see on this beautiful Christmas tree, the Suku plush world is very colorful. And you have Sukus for many of the different variations, as well as up there in the top, you can see a strap Suku, and what those are basically just smaller versions of the regular Suku, except they also have a little keychain on them, so you can put them on your phone or your purse or whatever. And also in 2012, I believe, Nukodepo also released 2 larger sizes of the Kane Suku. We have one up here. This is the burger. And you can see the other size also, like the 2 Kane Sukus are stacked next to the tree. But even larger than that is, in 2013, the giant Suku got released. As you can see, this thing is an absolute behemoth. It's over 2 meters long. It's like bigger than a deca. You know, you can't even fit it into your room. It's that fucking big. It's basically a beanbag. Yeah. And as many of you are saying, you know, I echo the sentiment that I would indeed like to own this piece of merchandise. However, one, it was sold for around like $500, and 2, it's just not being sold at all anymore. And then in 2016, they released the long Suku as well. So you can see that Suku is longer than a normal Suku, and the one below is even longer than that. In Japan, these are also called, I believe, the pillow Suku and the body pillow Suku. So yeah, those are the official plushes. Most of the variants you'll probably be able to get, but the long Sukus and the long Sukus, you know, maybe just keep an eye out on Yahoo auctions and try to get lucky. Yeah, that's basically that right there. All right, now I have, I guess, a bit of trivia to ask the crowd. Among the regularly available Suku variants, there is one that is consistently priced above the rest. Does anyone know what it is? I saw Vans first.
It's Sekibanki.
Yeah, it's the Sekibanki Suku. Why is it?
Because it's got 2 heads.
Yeah, it's actually just 2 Sukus in a trench coat, and I fucking love it. Anyways, moving on from official merchandise, we also have Suku cards. And these I think are really interesting. They're literally just Suku trading cards. Can you take them out the back? Yeah. I don't know if like you can see them, but I have all 3 of the Suku cards. And they're just cards by this game called Lychee, where it's like a trading card game where all the characters are from various Japanese pop culture, like otaku pop culture, that is. And of course, Toho is included in this. Even beyond that, we got Sukus represented in this. And for the Sukus, all the artwork is drawn by UPG himself. If you want to own this, usually they're available on Surugaya or Yahoo Auctions. I want to ask now, does anyone have a guess for which of the 3 is the rarest? Yes. Okay, I think I made it a little too obvious. Yeah, the blue Kane is indeed the rarest. So, typically the green one you can find for like very cheap, like 1 to 200 yen. The hollow one you can also find for pretty cheap, similar price range. But I will note that now the hollow one is becoming a little harder to find. Like for the first time ever, I checked before this panel and it's out of stock on Surugaya. But if it is in stock and you want the hollow one specifically, you can look for this no image on Surugaya. The other one will show up as the regular green Suku, and it'll be like, you know, Sukusuku Lychee 305A or something. And then there's like a 305B with no image, and that's the hollow one. And the blue one, it rarely ever gets listed, but it's usually like above 800 yen. And now I'll hand it off to Moko again to talk about the bootleg plushies.
So Sukus they're pretty cool, they're pretty cute in design, they have a lot of love and characterization put into them, but they have their drawbacks. They aren't made in as high production as Fumos or other types of plushies like Nesso berries, so they can be a lot harder to get your hands on. They also can unfortunately be scalped like many plushies. So as with all sorts, like for Fumos and all sorts of other plushies, there's become a market for bootleg Sukus, and they range from essentially being attempts to be as close as possible to the original, you know, as it can, to their own pretty much original unique designs. So there's all sorts of ones. You have the standard, which that's the one right in my head. The original. You have the a simple bootleg with painted eyes, like this one. It's kind of hard to see from up here, but if you were to get up, that's it.
Yeah. Like yours, I would say is like a triple bootleg.
I see triple bootleg. Then there's the triple bootleg, right, as you said there. So, like this one, very cheaply and simply made, but still very adorable and plush. And you got the paste eater variant. If you look up to the top right, and you also have customs, like if you see in the middle there, the rollover Suku, based off an artwork where it's meant to look like it's, you know, relaxing and sleeping outside. And
All right, and now, I guess, is the practical application part of the course. How do you actually find Suku merch? Like I mentioned earlier, for the official merch, usually you can find it on Akiba Hobby, and the best time to check would be right after a big convention such as Reitaisai or Koromu, because that's usually when they'll restock it, like for Nukodepo at his booth, as well as like later on in Akiba Hobby. For the books specifically, I believe they're all on DL site now. Like if you go to Nukodepo's DL site, then you can get the lore books. For Lore Book 0, the only reason why I knew the Omake existed was because it got combined into that PDF. So I was able to view the content. For bootlegs, typically you can find them on eBay for around like $30. Like that's where I got this one. And you can also go to like sketchy Chinese sites like, I don't know, like Taobao and stuff like that. And one thing that may be helpful when searching these sites specifically is inputting the Chinese name instead of Sukusuku's. So does anyone remember what the Chinese name is? Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
He's asking if it's him.
Yeah, it's him. Yeah, that's correct. So you could search like Bai Zhe like the characters, and that might yield you better results. Me personally, I usually just like to search a combination of different terms. And speaking of like, probably the best place to look if you want to get sukus for cheap is Japanese online marketplaces. So things like Surugaya, Mercari, Yahoo Auctions, and all those. There will be a lot of overpriced sukus on there, but they might also have like small items that like you don't find anywhere else. And what I like to do is I like to use proxy services, not really for the proxying, but rather for their search functionality. Like for example, I used to use like Baiyi, and now I use like DeJapan, but I still use both for their search functionality. Like they'll usually have an option where you can search across all the different sites at once, as well as set up alerts. So like if you say want to get alerted on a specific term, then you can set that up and it will send an email to you. So I find that very helpful. I'll usually search a combination of terms like Sukusuku, Sukusuku Nuko Depot, Sukusuku Toho, Sukusuku Hakutaku, and all that good stuff. Another thing you can do is join communities. So I'd like to shout out Ben Fish's Discord, the Sukusuku Resort. I honestly really love it there. It's a great community where we all come and talk about sukus. And also definitely appreciate Ben Fish for all the work that he's done getting sukus over to the West and then distributing them out. But yeah, just even beyond that, it's just a great place to be. And yeah, joining communities such as that one can help you find like people who are looking for similar things, and then you can share tips there. And finally, last but not least, conventions like this one. You can find fantastic suku merch. For example, I know, I believe it's Velpi and Unifans have like the suku pins and like even the custom made sukus such as Sagume Suku, Hina Suku, and all that good stuff. Like you can't get this anywhere else. This is your golden opportunity. Y'all should go out there and explore the artist alley. And like that suku pin that's next to my Hina Suku there is still one of my favorite pieces of merch. I got that year one here at Toho Fest from, I believe, like Atomic Cat's booth. It says good study, day up. I think that's really funny. Yeah, I just love it a lot. And like, that's not even speaking of like going abroad. Of course, you can find fantastic merch just here, but like there's circles such as Salted Fishes where he goes to conventions and prints 3D sukus, all different kinds of shapes and sizes. And with that, that is going to be it for our presentation. We have some sources here that I didn't finish filling out, but if anyone wants the presentation, I'll make sure this is all filled out with the proper sources. And thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah, I'll just say say the same thing, Amp. Thanks so much for coming to the presentation. This was a lot of fun to put together and put on for you guys. Am's much more familiar with a lot of the source books, so he made up a decent bit more chunk of the speaking regarding the technical information. But again, it was a fun joint effort to be able to have this opportunity with him.
Heck yeah. I couldn't have asked for a better co-presenter. And at this moment, I guess we are going to do the merch giveaway. So, Alex, did you give out all the tickets?
Yeah, there's none left.
I didn't get it.
Oh, there's... Okay, there's none left. Okay. Let's see. Gotcha. We only have enough tickets for like piece of merch. So maybe I have like an extra thing to give away. So if you have like another slip of paper somewhere, yeah, you could maybe like rip that one in half. Yeah, raise your hands if you are missing one. Got a few people missing one. So I guess not everyone will be able to get merch. But we are going to randomize the numbers. And yeah, basically the order that it comes up in is the order that you get to select the merch. And since we're getting close to time, I think the way we'll do this is after showing the order, the people who get merch can come to me after class and I'll hand out the merch. Yes, thank you so much. We need more super artists. Yeah. Yes, thank you so much.
Did I miss anyone?
Yeah, you got artists where they make supers their entire thing and they're enormously successful.
Tetsuya.
Like, Becca, she's not even the same. She's not even honorary 2016 maybe. But if you tell her to talk about Katie, she'll say that it's basically the last memory. She's in the game.
When are they gonna do the raffles?
We are going to clear the room for the industry panel.
Everyone who has a ticket or needs a ticket, follow me outside.
I don't think I
If I haven't taken, we go outside.
Yes.
Guys, questions will be outside. Unless you have things on the stage, please clear the room.
We just wait outside. If you wanted one, that's where you would get it. I'm not sharing this with anyone else besides one other person that I know.
You know what? Take one of those cards, leave it on stage right away. Thanks. All right. Alex,
Crazy amount of soup. We're really close to
Alex, Dakota.
Yeah.
Everything's in this bag. I just put it on it. One hat. Touch of pot. Oh wait, did I? I just want to take a buzz from all my friends. So I do that because there's so many more. So I plan to just go to the garden with them, take a picture with them. Is that any help? Sure. Thank you, Mocha.
Is this number one? All right. Test, test. All right. Yeah, this is number 3. Number 4? Okay.
Also, where is the merchant giveaway?
Yeah, hold on, Dan. Say it's outside.
All of the group leaders.
I don't have 2
No
pens.
problem, no problem. We get it.
It's outside.
Thanks for assistance.